A very good morning to you. The Prime Minister is facing yet another battle to get his Rwanda Bill through Parliament today, with another crunch vote ahead tonight. Well, yesterday saw him suffer the biggest rebellion of his leadership so far, with Deputy Party Chairman Lee Anderson and Brendan Clark-Smith and Parliamentary Private Secretary Jane Stevenson resigning in protest over the legislation. Well, let's look at what the bill is about. Of course, it relates to the Rwanda policy and has two specific purposes: to make any deal legally watertight with the hope of avoiding any potential setbacks further down the line. The legislation sets out to treat Rwanda as a safe country when determining whether any individuals should be sent there. It's designed to limit legal challenges against the policy, which will also apply to individuals and their claims. The bill also states that large parts of the Human Rights Act would be disapplied, which would otherwise be used to lodge legal challenges against deportation. Well, the illegal migration minister said they were working hard to get the bill through.
I know their concerns. Their concerns are my concerns, and I'm determined that we can get this legislation through, that we can stop the boats, because we have a plan to do that. And what we saw yesterday was a unity of purpose. Every single Conservative member of Parliament determined to ensure that the Rwanda policy works and to stop the boats. And what you saw in contrast to that was that Labour can't say what they would do because they have no plan. The Prime Minister is determined to stop the boats.
Jonathan Gullis, who is from the right-of-centre Common Sense group of the Conservatives, said he was still prepared to vote against the bill.
We have amendments that we are going to push to a vote later today unless the government's willing to adopt them. And as for third reading, look, colleagues will need to make their mind up, but there's a core group of us...
Which way are you going to vote was my other question.
Well, the answer to that, Kay, is if the bill is unamended, I will at the bare minimum abstain on the vote like I did at second reading, but I am very much prepared to walk in the no lobby if other colleagues I've been working intensively with all agree that's the right way forward.
Well, Labour responded to the events of last night, saying the Prime Minister doesn't have any authority over his party.
I think what Rishi Sunak is showing is an incredibly weak leadership, that his plan keeps stumbling. It literally seems to be his only policy at the moment. He isn't stopping the boats. Nearly 30,000 people came over on small boats last year. He pledged that it would stop in 2023. That's not stopping it. When it comes to stopping the boats, of course I want to stop the boats too, but the way to do it is to make sure you're going after the criminal gangs, resourcing them properly.
Joined now by our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, who's in Westminster. Sam, if you had to stake a beer with a colleague on whether the Prime Minister gets the vote to go his way tonight or not, which way would you bet?
I'd bet on him getting it through. Look, I'm talking to the rebels, I'm talking to people in government. The feeling at the moment is that Rishi Sunak will survive, the Rwanda bill will pass. Let me just run you through the hurdles that the Prime Minister faces this evening. Yesterday, 60 Conservative MPs voted against bits of the Rwanda policy. They want to toughen it up. They want to remove the ability of international law to interfere with the workings of the Rwanda policy. Rishi Sunak doesn't want to do that. Those amendments didn't pass because the opposition didn't join together with the rebels. But that's the number of people willing to vote against the government in some circumstances. However, today is the critical vote. It's a vote later on this evening on the principles of the bill. And it's one that all the opposition parties will oppose. The question is, can Rishi Sunak still have a majority for that bill? It would take somewhere in the region of 33, 34, 35 Tory rebels to vote against the policy with through the same division lobbies as Keir Starmer for the bill to be brought down and actually plunge Rishi Sunak's premiership into crisis. So will 33 of those 60 press the nuclear button, in effect? And the kind of impression I'm getting at the moment is that they think it's less likely rather than more. There are lots of meetings today. There's lots of work to be done in the Commons Chamber as well. The government's offering certain concessions. For instance, it might change the Civil Service Code to insist that civil servants follow instructions to ignore interim rulings from the Strasbourg Human Rights Court. For instance, one way of assuaging concerns of the rebels that Strasbourg might get involved doesn't seem to be enough for some of the rebels who are already complaining about that. They want it written in law that you ignore the Strasbourg rulings, but all of this will continue to work its way through the course. But as I say, at the moment, the expectation is that there won't be 33 or more rebels pressing the nuclear button and potentially voting down Rishi Sunak's bill, and with it potentially his administration, simply because it would be such a big act of hostility and division in election year.
So, Sam, different questions from last hour. Is it definitely going ahead, this vote tonight? If the Prime Minister, if the government thinks there's actually quite a good chance we might lose it, will they call the rebels bluff and think, look, we have to get this through, or go to an election and, you know, collapse the government down that route? Or might they pull it, might they go cap in hand and say, oh, we're listening to everyone and we're going to still get this over the line and just pull the vote for now, or will it go ahead?
At time of speaking, the language of the government is that providing that the bill isn't amended, there are more rebel amendments very unlikely to get through today, then they will push through to that third reading vote, the vote on the principles of the bill, the vote that the oppositional attempt to reject later today. So, yes, it does look like the government are currently intending to try and call the bluff of the rebels and are hoping that that 60 figure gets down below the critical 32, 33, 34 threshold. It's a gamble. I think when the numbers flashed up on the Sky screen last night, a little bit before 7 o'clock, showing that there were 70 votes against the policy. 8 of those or so were actually from the DUP. A couple of them were tellers. So 60 Tory rebels. I think there was a sort of intake of breath across Westminster because that felt quite high. But Downing Street is effectively gaming that there aren't 30 plus Tory MPs who want to potentially oust Rishi Sunak, which isn't to say, Wilf, that one of the things that has sort of revealed itself over the last 24, 48 hours is there is just quite a lot of uncertainty in the Conservative Party about Rishi Sunak. Here we are in election year, still the Conservative Party are, you know, somewhere close to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 percentage points behind the Labour Party, depending on what poll you look at. There was that big YouGov MRP poll Sunday into Monday that suggested that there'll be a landslide to Labour of 120 seats, even if an election campaign squeezes the difference between Labour and the Conservatives. It's very grim. The mood is very grim. The uncertainty about the way Rishi Sunak is operating government is sort of starting to surface at the moment. So I think even though this might, in fact, be the last mega vote before an election, I don't think the whips and Downing Street want to risk many more scenes like this as polling day approaches quite closer. I do think that the fundamentals for the Prime Minister are quite weak at the moment.